We've had on quite a few guests. We have one more. Further before on the show as we break down as we've talked about the debates that have been out there. Sarah Rumpf. Good morning, Sarah. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well.
Well, you have been pretty busy for the weekend with a story about a mailer and the Ted Cruz campaign. Bring our listeners up to speed on this because it really blew up over the weekend.
Yeah, well, what happened is if anybody follows me on Twitter, at Rumpf, they know that I am quite the prolific tweeter, and I happened to see what the news was on Friday evening and saw somebody retweeting some guy from Iowa who said he got a mailer that he didn't like. And I reached out to him and got the rest of the story and saw that it was blowing up. So I reached out to my editors at IJ Review and said, hey, I think this is a story. So they said, well, contact the Cruz campaign. I said, yep, I'm on that. I already texted them to see if it's real, and let's write it up. So the cliff notes on this, and I just retweeted the article, is that there's a mailer that went out from the Cruz campaign. They have I'm still getting accused of making this all up and still getting accusations that it's a hoax and a plant. It's not. The Cruz campaign has said on the record multiple times all weekend that it's their mailer.
Well, even Ted Cruz
yes.
came out and spoke about it.
Right. And what this is from, there was a couple years ago, there were some political scientists who did a study. And if you contact voters and say, here's your voting record and here's your neighbor's voting record, and how you vote is private, but your voting history is public record. So we want to encourage you to vote, and we're going to send this out again after the election, and everyone will know if you voted or not. It's not the cuddliest strategy. It's a social pressure strategy, but it does work in certain circumstances when it's applied the right way. And this has been done in other elections. When I wrote the article, I remembered off the top of my head that I'd seen it done in 2012 by Obama. Found out, as you know, you when you write a story that blows up, then people start sending you things, so you become a quick expert.
Right.
Joni Ernst, senator in Iowa, had done a similar mailer with the Iowa Republican Party in 2014. Now, the Cruz mailer got attacked for a couple specific things. It looked more official. It wasn't immediately apparent it was campaign material. The disclaimer was there. I have never accused him of doing anything illegal. But people got a little irritated because it said in big red letters, voter violation, this is a public record, that kind of thing. And what it had on the back was language encouraging the person to vote, saying that they had their score, this was their score, and it listed their name and their neighbors' names, and assigned them failing grades, and encouraged them to go out and vote in the caucus on Monday, and said that a follow-up notice might be issued. So I wrote the story, got the quote from the Cruz campaign saying that it was their mailer, that this was to turn out low propensity voters and encourage them to vote. And then, the story made a little bit of fluff. And then the next morning I woke up and Steve Deese, who's a popular Iowa radio host, obviously not as popular and cool as the Chad Hasty Show.
Exactly.
But, come on. But I see that he's attacking the story on Twitter, saying the story is fake, the quote is fake. And then he's tweeting it again, somebody's saying, no, this is real. And he says, no, that's a made-up person. And so then the Iowan who's at the middle of all this is like, I'm real, I promise.
Wow.
I was tweeting at him, I'm like, I didn't make it up. That's the Cruz campaign on the record. You're calling me a liar? What is this? So that somehow, all of that attracted a little bit more attention. BuzzFeed wrote an article. It started getting a little crazier. And then all of a sudden, the Iowa Secretary of State came out with a statement very strongly condemning the mailer for looking like official government communication, for implying that the government scores or grades voters, for the voter violation language. And it blew up from there. We had a dredge hit. We had Fox News has been talking about it. And then Sunday, somebody finds a Rubio mailer, and the Cruz people, I completely understand why they were passing it around because, look, he did the same thing. But the problem is that when you look at the two mailers side by side, you see that the Rubio campaign followed the original political scientist strategy much closer. It's a much more subtle piece. It's very obviously a Rubio campaign piece. And it says Iowa Caucus report card or something like that. And it just lists whether the voter voted or not in the last couple caucuses. There's no listing of neighbors' names. There's no threat to embarrass you with your neighbors. It doesn't say violation. It doesn't say official notice, anything like that.
Do you think that really? I know there was an experiment done or what, but just the people that I've spoken to have said, well, if it publicly shamed me and my neighbors, I wouldn't really like that too much, and it really wouldn't convince me to vote for you if you sent that out. So it kind of sounds like a gamble to me.
Making it look like an official notice and the neighbor shaming part is the highly controversial part. And I don't have any specific science on it, but I do know that the comments and the stuff I was seeing on Twitter and the comments on the articles that I saw as the story spread, that a lot of people were highly uncomfortable with the idea of outing them to their neighbors. There's a New Yorker article by Ryan Lizza where they quote a woman who has voted in caucuses before but is now disabled and can't go this year, and she was really mad that this was going to be embarrassing her to her neighbors.
Yeah.
Now, I understand the strategy, and people say they don't like negative campaigning, but negative ads do work. And this is a tough election. Politics ain't beanbag. Nobody's crying over this. But when I've seen this strategy done before, it's been done in a general election because when you look up a voter and they're a low turnout kind of voter, but they're a registered Democrat, the Obama campaign knows if they send a letter to a registered Democrat, they're more likely than not to vote Obama over Romney.
Right. Same
with a Republican election. Here, in a highly contested primary, with the Iowa caucuses being a low turnout, weird, sort of situation, when you're sending these to low turnout Iowa caucus Republicans, you don't know if you're sending them to Rubio supporters. And, like the original guy that inspired my story had said that he was, and I put this in the story, that he was leaning towards Rubio but wasn't planning to caucus, but the mailer creeped him out and made him so annoyed that I think his quote was that it put him over the edge. So he wasn't going to caucus, but now he was because the Cruz people made him mad.
Interesting. We're visiting with Sarah Rumpf. Sarah, let's say I've been asking everyone who's come on their predictions on the Iowa caucus tonight as far as the Republicans go. Earlier I had Eric Erickson on, and he even talked about a buzz, and including Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick mentioned the same buzz later on in the show, that Rubio could finish second in this whole thing if voter turnout is low. What do you actually think? What are you hearing from folks either on the ground or just in your circle? What do they think is going to happen?
Well, there was a post that I'll have at Opportunity Live shortly. I don't know if it's quite up yet. If not, it'll be up later this morning. There was a poll that came out late last night that seemed to have a pretty tough voter screen. They pulled their numbers from registered Republican voters and asked them if they were definitely going to caucus and if they knew where their caucus location was. And that showed that Trump and Rubio and Cruz were within a statistical tie. I emailed the pollster and he responded back saying that the mailer definitely had an effect because they did their poll on Friday and Saturday. So the last half of their poll universe was when the mailer story was really blowing up. And he said he saw a sharp, significant drop-off for Cruz after that mailer story started blowing up. Now, they didn't ask specifically a question about the mailer, like, did you see the story about the Cruz mailer? Are you changing your vote because of that? So there's no way to say for certain, but the timing of it directly coincides with when the story was blowing up.
Interesting.
The other thing, and maybe this is just a little bit of wishful thinking on my part, I don't think I've made any secret of the fact that I don't like Donald Trump. I don't think he's conservative. As a strong pro-lifer, I can't stand the way he talks about the issue. He really does not have the ground game that you really do need to turn out in Iowa. And for people unfamiliar with the caucus system, the way it works is they get everybody together in a room in the high school cafeteria or a church room or something, and then the precinct captains who are volunteering with all the campaigns give a little speech and do their best to talk everybody into voting for their candidate. And a lot of Iowans still show up undecided. Public speaking is not something that comes natural to a lot of people, and all the stories I've seen about Trump's ground game, a lot of his precinct captains were brand new, had never done the caucus thing before, and he didn't have anywhere. A late December article, he didn't even have 10% of the precincts covered. Cruz, on the other hand, they need to be commended for their ground game. It's huge. Cruz has more precinct captains in Iowa than Santorum did when he surprised everybody and won in 2012.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of volunteers both in Iowa and around the country that are making phone calls for him. It's been a very well-organized effort. They spent a lot of money on it, put a lot of effort into it. And Rubio has had a little bit more under the radar thing, but they've been getting out there, and he's been having a lot of enthusiasm at his rallies too. As somebody who considers myself a conservative, I'm hoping that either Cruz or Rubio win this thing tonight. And I think that, and it's very interesting the way the expectation game has been played, because Trump's ego declares that he has to win everything. And the Rubio people have been like, yeah, we're going to come in third. So now if they come in third, that's solid. They're in a, solid, comfortable spot. If they do any better, if they even make it close to second, if they get second or by some miracle win the whole thing, then it's crazy. And that's a heck of a lot of momentum going into New Hampshire.
Yeah, well, and it'll be a sight to see if Trump actually finishes third. The speech will be absolutely amazing to watch. Sarah, I've got to get going. Thanks for giving us a call today. I appreciate it.
No problem. Have a great day.
You too. That's Sarah Rumpf. You can follow her on Twitter, and, of course, she's a freelance writer. You can view her work on a number of places, including IJReview.com.